Welcome to the new year, and soon Tallahassee welcomes the Florida legislative session. Sam Garrison represents Clay County and holds a leadership role at the state capitol. Today, with him, we're looking at projects across Northeast Florida, his excitement about the University of Florida coming to Jacksonville, and what's happening at UNF, plus his view on the proposals to repeal property tax. Then a former lawmaker's view on property tax and the national debt. Congressman Ted Yoho joins us. We'll also revisit the topic of agriculture and labor issues, all on This Week in Jacksonville. So glad you're with us. All right, January 4th. So in 9 more days, the House and Senate convene Florida's legislative session, which lasts 60 days. State Representative Sam Garrison is with us today. I'm so glad you were able to make it in. We know that here we come into a new year, and on this particular year, the session starts in January. The other years, it's in March. But here we go, and maybe explain to people, it doesn't just start in January. Yeah. It's been these last couple of months, committees and all that sort of thing.
Yeah,
right?
We've been working as the legislature over the past 3 or 4 months, honestly, getting back in Tallahassee, getting our sea legs under us, trying to figure out what the agenda is going to be for this year. And then obviously next week, the gavel will drop and we'll get ready for 60 days.
Yeah, so what are some of the priorities that you yourself have, and we've seen or we've been hearing about? Hey, the governor says property tax relief is a priority. Speaker Perez has been saying, yeah, we've got some other ideas on that too. Where are the priorities for you?
Well, for me, it's taking care of Northeast Florida. That's the number one goal, is to make sure Jacksonville in general, Clay County in particular, is well represented and taken care of. So we want to make sure we don't have the population of a Miami or even really a Tampa, but we want to make sure that we work together as a unit in Tallahassee, and that the needs of the First Coast are addressed and our voice is heard. Property tax is going to be a big issue this year. Like you mentioned, the governor has been very out there and saying he would like to see something on the ballot this coming November for the voters to consider about reducing or maybe eliminating property taxes. The House agrees with him on that. Devil's always in the details, obviously, yeah. But we're going to work through that. Hopefully the Senate gets on board with us as well.
Yeah, there are some differing ideas about how to get there. And most recently, I think we were talking about, hey, in the House, there are several different possibilities for property tax relief. Not all of them would necessarily align with what the governor says he wants to have happen. How do you work through that in a legislative process to come up with something that eventually could go to voters in November?
Like most things in the legislature, it's messy, but it's messy by design. It's supposed to be difficult to get something on the ballot, and it is. So the House has decided to do is we're going to just start the process rolling. The Speaker rolled out 6 different proposals for consideration, and we've kind of gone from 6 proposals, we're kind of winnowing it down to get a better understanding of where the governor is, where the Senate is, where the public is, where we think we can get 60% of voters to agree with us. So I think in the early part of the session, the House will make our best foot forward of what we think is going to be get the most relief to taxpayers and has the greatest chance of being approved by 60% of the voters. That's the balance we're trying to find. I think the governor, he's obviously been very, very strong in support of the issue. Not really sure necessarily where he's going to be in terms of what policy he's going to endorse. And then the Senate, we're kind of waiting to see where they are too. There's been a lot of encouragement, but we haven't seen specific proposals. So it's a work in progress.
You and your colleagues, what are some of the answers to the big pushback that we're hearing is, hey, if you reduce or take away property tax revenue, then municipalities, the local governments, are going to have a really hard time providing essential services.
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out. And all the proposals we put forward, we've made it very clear that public safety, police and fire, those teachers,
really
education,
right?
Those sort of stuff, we're carving that out to make sure that there's absolutely no reduction in essential services. And I'll tell you, it's difficult because Clay County, where I'm from, we run a pretty lean local government. Other parts of South Florida, not so much. And so what we're trying to do is come up with something that will kind of take some of the air out of the balloon in areas where property values have risen so much in recent years that some of the local governments have kind of gotten a bit fat on that sort of increased tax revenue, while simultaneously making sure that for the areas that have been running lean, that haven't had that same exponential growth in property tax value, that they're able to continue to perform those core services. It's difficult. That's why it's taking a long time to try to test different ideas, but that's ultimately where we want to arrive.
Let's talk about higher education a little bit. I know that I've got 3 young people who went through schools in Northeast Florida, had great experiences. We know UNF's going through a transition. Jacksonville University is going to go through a transition for their president, but also UF landing in Jacksonville this year with this graduate campus. This is pretty important stuff.
I think it's hugely important, specifically as it relates to the UF campus downtown and the University of North Florida. If you ask me what are the 2 or 3 things in the time I've been in Tallahassee where I've seen the biggest growth opportunities for Jacksonville as a region, for the First Coast, that's it. It's the UF investment downtown that's coming within the next year, and then the University of North Florida. I mean, UNF is what I call it a growth stock. If you look at the demographics of Jacksonville and the number of young students that want to be at UNF, the location, proximity to the beach, all that sort of stuff, it's an amazing asset that we have as a region to recruit, train, and retain top talent, and also be accessible for our kids. And so that's really an area of emphasis that I see. Obviously, the UF investment downtown it's not an undergrad experience, it's kind of a post-grad experience. But what that's going to do for downtown Jacksonville, I really can't overemphasize the transformative nature of that project. In 5 years from now, we're driving down 95 going downtown, and you see the UF brand and the US campus right there by the interstate. It's going to be amazing for Jacksonville.
Do you think there's more that the state will offer in terms of support, or do you think that's necessary for the UF graduate campus?
It is necessary. We've had a tremendous amount of state support, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars. The city's ponying up quite a bit, and there are a lot of private investment as well. So it's really a 3-part process: public dollars from the state, public dollars from the city, and then obviously private philanthropy. Again, I just can't reemphasize it enough. It's going to be big for Jacksonville. And again, we're talking about bringing top medical talent, top research talent, top engineering talent to the city of Jacksonville, which is good for us all.
Yeah. Before we run out of time, I want to make sure people here understand. So you're slated to be the Speaker of the House starting in the next cycle, after this legislative session. On deck. What are some of the things that are going to be important to you as you move into that new role?
I think the difference from, obviously advocating for Clay County and advocating for Jacksonville in general, that's where my heart is. When you're in the Speaker chair, though, you do have to look at the state as a whole. And one of the things that I have said repeatedly, and I say it to kind of keep myself accountable to it, is we want to focus on those top tier issues. And by that, I mean the things that got us to where we are as a state nowadays. And that's having a strong economy, having safe streets, and having quality schools. If you have a strong economy where people can have hope, they have great jobs, where companies want to engage, invest their capital, that's special. And you add that to a state that said, we are going to kind of go against the grain a little bit and make sure that we focus on public safety and emphasize and support our law enforcement personnel, and do that simultaneously with going for groundbreaking policies in education so every kid in this state has a chance to access their God-given potential. If you do those 3 things, strong economy, safe streets, quality schools, good things will happen.
So you're a Republican, and the Republican Party has been in leadership in the state of Florida for decades. We don't know who the next governor is going to be.
It's true.
We don't know which party is going to be able to say, okay, we've got a majority. And how would you accomplish what you want to do as Speaker of the House if there's a Democrat who ends up being the leader of the state as the governor's office?
I worry about a lot of things. I don't worry about that.
You're not worried about that?
I don't worry about that. Republicans, our brand in the state has been extraordinarily strong. The voters have made it very clear over the years, not just in terms of the end result, which is what ultimately matters, starting with Governor Bush all the way here through Governor DeSantis. We've shown that the Florida of 30 years ago is vastly different than the Florida of today, and voters like what they see today. People are voting with their feet. We're seeing in the voter registration numbers where a majority of the registered voters in the state are Republican for the first time ever in the history of the state, and it's increasing day after day. Are we perfect? No, of course not. We're going to make mistakes. We try to be honest with them and correct those when they happen. But I'll tell you what, the proof's in the pudding. The voters keep on sending us back, and more people are coming here because they like the policies of the free state of Florida. Yeah.
Well, we're going to watch what happens in this legislative session. And one of the topics we didn't get to, I know you said transportation is going to be key in the region, Clay County specific, but some of those infrastructure issues, we'll be watching it all and hope to have you after the session.
Happy to do it, Ken.
Thank you so much, State Representative Sam Garrison. Appreciate you. All right, so from a Clay County state rep to a man who represented Clay County in Congress for 8 years, Ted Yoho joins us when we come back on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
So glad you stayed with us. Former Congressman Ted Yoho is with us, and it's been a bit since we got to visit like this. He represented Florida's 3rd Congressional District and served on the House Agriculture and Foreign Affairs Committees. You showed it to me. You wrote an op-ed here about the Florida property tax repeal. We were just talking with the State Representative Sam Garrison about these options that are going to happen. What's your view on this notion? Hey, let's eliminate or drastically reduce property taxes in
I think
Florida.
it sounds great on the surface, but then you have to look at the unintended consequences. And what I mean by those are we can look back. If government runs short of money, who's the tax collector going to turn to? You know, it's going to be back to the property tax owner. And we saw what happened with 9/11, what happened to the economy throughout the nation, throughout the world, what happened with COVID, what happened in the 2008 real estate downturn. When government runs short of money, they're going to have to make it up somewhere. So do they come back with increased property taxes? Do they put a VAT tax on or a consumption tax? Or worse, what if they were still short and they come up with a personal income tax for the state of Florida?
You'd be opposed to that? Most people who live in the state of Florida and earn income say, I'm opposed to that.
We live here for a reason.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you look at how they value property, Kent, you know, it's subjective a lot of the times. And I can give you a personal example. We had a double-wide mobile home on the St. Johns River, my wife and I. So it was her and me, and we had a dog. It was 4,200 square feet is what I was taxed on. The property value was about $274,000. The taxes were $4,000. We tore that down, built a new house, half that size, 2,450 square feet. It's valued at considerably more, $775,000. The property taxes are $17,000. So they went up. The house was half in size, but the property taxes went up 3 times, and it's still me, my wife, and we do have 2 dogs, so I can see why they want to tax me more. But
it's an expensive dog.
There are no more. There are no more services, and so I think a better way to look at this, and this is what I caution the Florida legislature and the voters, because the voters, yeah, if you can get rid of my property taxes, I'm all for that. But if they take that big bump out of homesteaded property taxes, which is $18 billion, $18.5 billion, instead of taking that hit right now, what if they were to tax you differently, maybe on square footage? Because square footage is not subjective. It is in the plans when you submit them to build a house.
So you're suggesting maybe a price per square foot?
Price per square foot, or put that in there, or maybe a per capita. You know, if I'm a family of 2, my wife and I, we're not going to use any more government services this year versus next year, hopefully. But if you have a family of 6, who's going to use more government services? So I think that's something they ought to look at. And then if they really want to make it attractive, put an age limit. Say if you're 60 or 65, get rid of them. But I'd also put in there a year that you were a Florida resident, because you don't want people moving down right now to take advantage of that. And I think they need to think through this before they go, because once they do that and they're short of money, that's where the problems are showing.
And as I was just discussing with the state representative, what about essential services? And certainly that's a key factor, I think, in what people are going to say yes or no to, don't you?
It really is, because if you look at what government taxes cover, it is, you know, all those services you talked about, from retirement, salaries and retirements for all government employees at the state or at the county level. It goes to our teachers, it goes to the sanitation workers, roads, infrastructure. And if they run short, are they going to be able to make that up in a timely manner? And if you have another downturn of the economy, and they run short, it'll be years before they reclaim that. And they're going to have to get the money somewhere, and it'll be you and I, the taxpayers.
I want to shift topics just for a moment here. We've got a couple minutes left in this segment, and then we'll keep talking. But last week on our show, I showed the story of a farmer in Alachua County,
I appreciate
cabbage farm, and he walked through, I can't get legal immigrant labor in here, and if I don't, I'm going to lose $1 million. And he basically said, if I can't do it, I'm done with this.
Right.
You suggest that agricultural labor issue is something that's going to affect all of us at some point.
It is. It really is. And the bottom line is a national security issue. Historically, in America, we have spent about 6.25% of our discretionary income on food. As I traveled the world when I was in Congress, you find out people are paying 15 to 20% of their income on food. All right. So we have been blessed in this country, and it's because of our farmers, the work ethic they have, the ability to raise crops as efficiently as they do. But when you look at all the things, the inputs that go into agriculture, labor is one of those things that should not be a variable. You know, the weather is, you know, the environment, those are variable. Trade policies shouldn't be variable, but they are, and they're detrimental to certain regions of the country, especially in the areas like Florida that are seasonally growing at the same time Mexico is. But labor should not be one of those things that is a variable. Government has had 40 years to fix a program, and that was my frustration up there. Everybody wants to fix it until you start talking about it. Then it becomes political. You're against, you know, people of color, or you're against immigrants. No, we need those people here to have a steady food supply. And it goes back to George Washington. He said, if you don't have food security, you don't have national security. I mean, our founding fathers are so smart in so many of these things, and we should be smart enough to come up with a guest worker program. And we put one in my last Congress, and I sent it again to Susie Wiles. I hope you're watching, Susie, wherever you are.
see if you can get that.
It was a great program.
Well, we're going to keep talking here. Sure. I appreciate it. Stay with us. And one of the controversies that travels from 2025 into the new year, American military assaults on suspected drug boats. Analysis from Congressman Ted Yoho next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
Republican Ted Yoho built his practice as a large animal veterinarian, then served 4 terms in the United States Congress. And I know there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about here. These drug boat attacks that we've seen video of, certainly it's been controversial. Your view, is it wrong? And if so, what should or can Congress do about it?
No, I think it's wrong personally, my personal opinion. You know, we're doing extrajudicial killings, I guess is what you'd call it. And we're doing it in
serving sentences without the process?
Yeah, and we're doing it in international waters. My concern is, does that open up the door for another country to do the same to our military? They see it as as a threat, like as they're patrolling around another nation. Oh, well, we thought they were a threat, so we took them out. I'm all for getting rid of the drug trade. In fact, we were asked by the Trump administration before they won in this next election, and they asked my opinion on that. And I think we ought to do with drugs, people bring them in our country, and this is harsh, make it a capital offense. And I got that from Prime Minister Lee of Singapore, because I asked him that question, do you have a drug problem? He says, Congressman, I can't afford a drug problem in my country. We're a country of 5 million people, 3 million are Singaporeans, 2 million are immigrants, and it's a capital offense if you bring them in. As harsh as that is, I don't think you'd have to do it often, but I think it sends a strong signal. You're accomplishing the same thing, but you have put the marker out there that we will not allow drugs to come in. But that's only one side of the equation. The other side is the demand side on our side. We need to work on that, and you know, it starts off with legalizing marijuana and things like that are gateway drugs. It's been shown over and over again. And I think our country's going down the wrong path, but I think I am against what President Trump is doing. I think there's a better way, and that's not America. We're a better nation than to do that. That's my opinion.
Well, members of Congress right now on both sides of the aisle are saying we need more information here, and so it's at least being examined.
Well, I think we need to have a strong policy of what our policy is on bringing illegal drugs into the country, and then stand by that. Don't waver on it.
Want to make sure we talked about this. You've referred to the national debt as America's Achilles heel. Mm-hmm. What do you want to see done about it, and what did you try to accomplish in those terms while you were in Congress up on Capitol Hill?
Oh, I tell you what, you talk about an exercise in futility. Our debt is the nation's the primary existential threat to our nation. As you and I were talking over break, if you're broke, it removes all other options like into research and development, things like that. And what I tried to do was, you know, we tried to get this under control when I first went in, when our country was at about $12.5 trillion in debt. And I got all kinds of hate stuff from just the establishment up there. They said I didn't know anything about finances. Well, here we are at the $38.4 trillion in debt. Wow. So who was the insane one? Somebody trying to stop it back then. And I remember there was one bill I tried to bring up to make Social Security disability insurance more solvent. It would have extended the program out 10 years. And I had Republicans that would not sign on to our legislation because an election was coming up and they were afraid that it looked like they were cutting things, programs, that the voter or their opponent would use them. Two of the things we were going to get rid of was removing Social Security disability insurance for somebody that was a HARP seal killer that couldn't find gainful employment. Just remove that. Another one was if you're a telegraph operator in the 21st century, and if you can't find gainful employment, you can go on SSDI for.
It seems like that would be difficult to do.
But members of my own party, the Republican Party, told me, Ted, I can't do that because it looks like I'm cutting Social Security. So you wonder why it doesn't change up there. You've got people they're not willing to make a tough decision that's good for the country because they don't want to be viewed bad as cutting a program that shouldn't even be there.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the time.
Sure.
Like I mentioned at the beginning of our interview a few minutes ago, it's been too long since we got to visit. So I'm glad you're able to make it in.
I am
and
too,
talk
and I
about some of
appreciate
these
the
things.
opportunity, and thank you.
All right. Hey, thank you for watching on air on Channel 4 and the CW17, and then online at news4jax.com or streaming on News4JAX Plus. Next time, our Hand on Government episode with a comprehensive look at the legislative session. Wyman Duggan, state representative, he'll be with us as well.
See why every day more people are choosing News4JAX, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.